So here we go. Spirit of life, join me if you will. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the land, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the land, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Thank you, Kimbris. I love that song, and I actually did remember all the words. Good morning and welcome to the home of Unitarian Universalism in Central Washington. My name is Barb St. Croix, and I'm the celebrant for today's service. If you're a visitor this morning, we're glad you're here. This morning, we welcome every person of goodwill, just as you are. However you get around, whomever you love, whatever body you inhabit, whatever your age, you are welcome here. We invite everyone to join us for our virtual coffee hour in the same Zoom right after the service. If you have questions about our congregation or Unitarian Universalism in general, the order of service, you're supposed to call so you can have those questions answered. The order of service is available in the chat section. However, there are some pieces missing, so you might just want to just go with the flow of our service today. Thank you.
It is important to take some time every Sunday to acknowledge the story of the land our congregation sits on. We gather on the homeland of the Piscosa, where they lived for generations upon generations as stewards of this land. The Piscosa people still live here. For over 2 centuries, the United States government has broken its 1885 and 1893 agreements with the Piscosa. The government stole the land ceded to the Piscosa through fraudulent surveys, indifference, intentional violations, and by land transfers to colonists and corporations. The Piscosa continue their traditions and seek to have all their rights recognized.
The call to worship today is from Lynn Anderson. She's with the UAA. Committed to respond to the call of a wounded world, we join together this day with loving hearts, hands, and minds. Embracing the interconnected web of water, air, and earth, we light a fire of sustaining hope, ever bright with love and justice. May we bring forth this day new wisdom, strength, and courage to create a world not of wealth, but of well-being, a world of new peace and abundance for all. As we give thanks for this earth, our shared and singular home, may we dedicate ourselves to its ongoing care, rising to the calls deep within us and all around us. May we respond today and always with courage and with love. It's good to be together this morning.
Now we'll do the chalice lighting. So if you have a chalice with you, please join me now in lighting it. If you haven't got a candle, you can always cup your hands to make a chalice. In the light of truth, and the warmth of love, we gather to seek and seek to share. The wisdom reading this morning is a poem by Drew Dellinger called Hieroglyphic Highway. It's 3:23 in the morning, and I'm awake because my great-great-grandchildren won't let me sleep. My great-great-grandchildren ask me in dreams, what did you do while the planet was plundered? What did you do when the earth was unraveling? Surely you did something when the seasons started failing and the mammals and reptiles and birds were all dying. Did you fill the streets with protests when democracy was stolen? What did you do once you knew? I'm riding home on a Colma train. I've got the voice of the Milky Way in my dreams. I have teams of scientists feeding me data daily and pleading. I immediately turn it into poetry. I want just this consciousness reached by people in range of secret frequencies contained in my speech. I am the desirous earth, equidistant to the underworld and the flesh of the stars. I am everything already lost the moment the universe turns transparent and all the light shoots from the cosmos. I use words to instigate silence. I'm a hieroglyphic stairway in a buried Mayan city suddenly exposed by a hurricane of satellite circling Earth, finding dinosaurs in the bones in the Gobi Desert. I am telescopes that see back in time. I'm the precession of the equinoxes, the magnetism of the spiraling sea. I'm riding home on the Colma train with the voice of the Milky Way in my dreams. I am myths where violets blossom from blood like dying and rising gods. I'm the boundary of time, soul encountering soul, and tongues of fire. It's 3:23 in the morning, and I can't sleep because my great-great-grandchildren ask me in dreams, what did you do while the earth was unraveling?
Thank you, Lori. Today is the United Nations Sunday, and our Climate Justice Task Force is honoring this day with some of our own inspiration to do this work. This theme this year is All In for Climate Justice, Food Equity, and Sustainability. It was after attending a conference this spring on equity that Ronnie first learned about the connection between UU and UN. She said the Unitarian Universalist Association office at the UN was created in 1962 at the recommendation of the US ambassador to the UN at the time, and a Unitarian, Adlai Stevenson. From leading the Faith Caucus to establish the International Criminal Court, to overcoming UN apathy about sexual orientation and gender identity issues, the UU at UN has a long history of providing strong leadership in all aspects of human rights at a policy level throughout the UN consultative status. Although we are not collecting for UN Sunday through our fellowship at this time, if you'd like to contribute to their work, you can do so by going to unitednations@uua.org. I'd like to introduce our first speaker today, Jana Fishbach. She's the Executive Director and co-founder of Sustainable Wenatchee. Welcome, Jana.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me join your service today. I am Jana Fishbach. I'm the Executive Director and co-founder of Sustainable Wenatchee. Our mission is to promote a culture of environmental stewardship and social sustainability in North Central Washington, and I'm really grateful to have a chance to share a little bit about what we do with you today. Your congregation has been really involved in some of the programs we've had in the past, like our NCW Eco Challenge, where you, I think, have won at least one, maybe 2 years in a row. So awesome job. Sustainable Wenatchee provides education and outreach on all topics related to environmental issues, and also educates on how interlinked environmental sustainability is with social and economic sustainability. So the focus on food equity today is a great example of that interconnectedness. My organization has a very local focus where we help make residents aware of how their daily behaviors impact our earth. We're not a political organization. We only encourage voluntary behavior changes and help people, inspire people to make those changes. Sometimes those are easy and small, and sometimes those are big and more difficult. This grows the impact from just one person to a family or a group. to our community. And at that community level, that's when we can really see change take place. Sustainable Wenatchee educates the community in a variety of ways. We regularly offer in-person or virtual classes on many topics. Past examples include working towards zero waste, becoming a conscious consumer, and alternative transportation. Coming up next month, we will be offering a Pybus University class on composting with worms inside year-round. We like to partner with organizations like Pybus to offer these classes, including the library, the college's continuing education program, and the museum. We've sponsored several documentary films as part of the museum's longstanding environmental film and speaker series. We also host discussion courses held virtually, which are kind of like a book club on a specific environmental topic. Past courses include Seeing Systems, Peace, Justice, and Sustainability, and A Different Way, Living Simply in a Complex World. Coming this winter is Choices for Sustainable Living. These are put together by the same nonprofit out of Portland that puts together the eco challenges that we've done in the past. We haven't done a custom eco challenge for NCW specifically in a while, but you can still participate in eco challenges individually going to ecochallenge.org. All of our programs, probably the most notable is our Earth Day Fair. When I co-founded Sustainable Wenatchee in 2017, we realized there wasn't a history of regular Earth Day celebrations in Wenatchee like there are in, say, Leavenworth or Chelan. So we threw together something for Earth Day 2018 outside of Pybus and had about 100 people show up. The next year, it was nearly 700 people. And after a hiatus, of course, in 2020, we had over 1,000 people come out to our 2021 Earth Day Fair, which was all masked, socially distanced outdoors, of course, late last spring or middle of spring this last year. A final way we offer resources for our valley is our website, sustainablewenatchee.org, which has 6 resource pages on topics like waste, food, and transportation. We also regularly write blogs, which are posted on the website, and articles for the Wenatchee World. Right now, we're working on fundraising for a really exciting project, the NCW Waste and Recycle Directory, which will be a searchable website where you can find out how to recycle or properly dispose of anything in Chelan and Douglas counties. If you'd like to stay up to date on our programs and events, the best way to do that is to sign up for our monthly e-newsletter. I send just one a month. You can do that on our website at the bottom of our homepage. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Finally, if you ever have any questions about anything sustainability related, I'm happy to answer questions and have discussion via email. You can email me at hello@sustainablewenatchee.org. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you, Jana. It's very informative. I really am so delighted that you were able to join us today. We have our first speaker from our climate justice team, and that's Lori Nichols. Lori?
Hi. So when we were talking about this, I came up with what climate justice means to me. As a child, I spent idyllic summers at my grandparents' 100-acre farm in Vermont. I drank from the clean water in the streams, breathed in the clean air, frolicked in the fields, and hiked in the woods, loving the solitude and safety of being nestled in the arms of Mother Nature, just pure bliss. And now I can no longer safely drink from streams. The air is filled with smoke in summer. Beloved forests have burned due to prolonged excessive heat, drought, and disease, all due to human-caused climate crisis. Our extraction and fossil fuel-based economy is destroying our environment. Many of our Indigenous, Black, and people of color are living on the front lines of this destruction and lack access to healthy food, clean air, and clean water. I have spent much of my time during COVID educating myself on climate justice and all that entails. Because of COVID, I got to attend over 40 Zoom workshops and presentations on this topic by international leaders in the climate justice movement. So I am really appreciative of Zoom because I would not have been able to attend probably even one of these under normal circumstances because they were given all around the world. And it was very eye-opening. I have learned that there can be no social justice without climate justice. I have learned how my being white in America and growing up in a middle-class family has spared me from firsthand experience of such environmental travesties. I've learned about the lies the fossil fuel industry told about disposable plastics, including how they promoted the recycling trend. They're the ones that started it as a marketing ploy just to get us to buy more, knowing full well that very little of that disposable plastic would actually be recycled. Only 9% of all disposable plastic ever produced has actually been recycled. And that includes the stuff that you think you're doing so well putting in your recycle bin. I also learned how small groups of people around the world are making big differences in their community. And I got to hear from them at many of these workshops, and that gave me hope. I learned about where to shop for zero waste products that do not use any plastic in their packaging. And they are offered by small businesses and women-owned business and BIPAC-owned businesses. I learned about what a climate-friendly diet is. I learned living a sustainable lifestyle is no longer enough. We need to live a regenerative lifestyle. And wow, was there some powerful presentations on that topic. I learned while I cannot do it all, I can do something. And it is my responsibility as a citizen of this planet to educate myself on what that can be, no matter how inconvenient it may be. I also learned we no longer have the luxury of time waiting for someone else to step up and fix things. As we, the privileged white Americans who have the time and the resources to make a difference, continue to live in ways that destroy all we hold dear. The biggest takeaways for me from these workshops and presentations are educate myself so I can make informed decisions, look at every action and purchase I make through the lens of climate justice, and realize that once I know better, I am obligated to do better. And I ask you once again, what will you tell your great-great-grandchildren you did when the earth was unraveling? So now is time for our offertory. The offertory is an ancient element of worship. The art of giving, regardless of amount, is a spiritual practice that expresses our thankfulness and generosity. We live these values and abundance. Joyfully sharing our gifts and strength in service to the greater good is one way we create beloved community. Thank you to all who are donating and continuing to pay your pledges in this very unusual time. We are blessed by your generosity. May your gifts of time, talent, and treasure make a difference in our communities through the ministries of this fellowship.
You probably wondered why I put bee antennae on. Today's story is titled Save the Bees, and it's written and illustrated by Bethany Stahl. Chelsea, could you put that up? On a warm, sunny day in the yard outside Mateo's apartment, a small buzz sounded from the center of a flower. Out of the petals popped a little bee named Clover, who had fluffy yellow stuff all over her. The friends heard the silly noise as a bee landed on Mateo's nose. Cho, Mateo's friend who lived next door, wondered why the bee was covered in yellow powder. Is that fluffy stuff pollen? Mateo asked the little bee. Clover buzzed. Yes, pollen sticks to my legs so I can carry it to other flowers. That's how new plants are made. It's called pollination. But why do you carry it to other plants? Is that your job? Mateo wondered. Yes, it's my job to collect and eat nectar. Flowers make nectar, which is delicious, sugary food. Then bees, like me, keep the nectar in our honey stomach. Do people have a honey tummy? And what do you use it for? Mateo asked. No, humans have one stomach, but bees have two, Clover said as she rubbed her tummy. My honey stomach is like a backpack, but on the inside of my body. I can carry nectar all the way home to the beehive. Once I get home, I empty the nectar out for bees that stay in the hive. Then they chew and chew and chew. It's just like bubble gum. The nectar will turn into thick, sticky honey, Clover explained. Whoa, Cho and Mateo said, we love honey. Thank you for making it. Clover yawned as her eyes blinked slowly. I love it too, but it's getting harder to travel to and from my home. The more buildings, roads, and parking lots people build, the less space there is for flowers to grow. Without flowers, there's no nectar or no pollen for me to carry. So bees like me are traveling further from home, and sometimes we travel so far, we forget how to get back. Mateo carried Clover to a nearby flower to take a nap. While she slept, Cho and Mateo brainstormed to help Clover. We can plant more flowers, Cho squealed. We can also build a bee hotel so Clover can have a place to stay, Mateo added. The friends quietly rushed inside their apartments to ask for their parents for help. Bees love sunflowers, lavender, and marigolds and peonies, Cho's mom said as she left for the store to buy a few plants. Mateo's dad helped them build a bee hotel with a reused plastic bottle and bamboo. Bamboo is a renewable resource. Mateo carefully cut off the top of the bottle as Cho placed bamboo inside for the bees to rest in. Clover woke up from her nap and flew to her friends. Surprise, her friends shouted. She buzzed around, seeing so many beautiful plants as she began spreading pollen and collecting nectar. We have one more surprise for you, Mateo grinned, thinking about the bee hotel he and Cho made. Clover saw the hotel that was perfect for her friends and family. Bees could now take a break between their home and flower field. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Clover cheered. Mateo and Cho exclaimed, together we'll all save the bees. And with apologies to the state of John Lennon, all we are saying is give bees a chance. Give Bees a Chance is actually a title of a different children's book by Bethany Barton. So take a look at that. I was amazed at how many bee stories there are, and we have to save the bees to help our planet. And the speaker number 3 would have been Ronnie, but today Kimbris is going to share her story.
Yeah, so this was prepared by Ronnie, and it's about food equity. We've all seen the photos of starving children from other countries, and we'd have to be pretty removed from any of the source of information. And we'd have to be pretty removed from any source of information to not know it exists here in our own land. I did not grow up poor and always had enough food to eat, never going to bed hungry. And it never occurred to me then that others were not so blessed. The prevailing attitude of that time was if you worked hard, you would have everything you needed. During my young adulthood was when I became aware of more social injustices, and like many of my generation, focused on things like the Vietnam War, then women's rights and civil rights. I'm sure we all thought once the Civil Rights Voting Act was passed, things would be all good. And for a time, we convinced ourselves that it was. But still, the idea of the gap between folks with and without didn't really hit me. While thinking of myself as a believer in injustice, I think that I, along with many others, were not as aware as I could have been to the true inequities of our society. During the last year and a half, as I joined a couple of CUF groups, my eyes were really opened. The Racial Justice Study Group brought me to a deeper realization than ever of the injustices that people of color were living with, and the history of how much of that is embedded in law. The Climate Justice Task Force, while seemingly unrelated, steered me to the knowledge that climate justice is racial justice, is food injustice or food justice. We are hearing more and more about food deserts and the lack of accessibility that many communities have to fresh, nutritious food. At the onset of COVID, our congregation formed a little free pantry team. And that endeavor, while inspired by the difficulty many people were having with access to food, woke all of us up to the fact that this accessibility had always been lacking. The dedication that a dozen or so teams in our valley have brought to maintaining these pantries is truly inspiring. Where does sustainability come into play here in the food equity movement? By providing access to fresh food grown in a sustainable way, That includes making the most of our resources, including water usage, and reducing fossil fuel use. More locally grown food can reduce transportation costs. Community composting can return waste to the earth. We need to limit pesticides that impact the pollinators, without which we wouldn't have food to eat. This all comes under the umbrella of climate justice. The possibilities to affect change are endless, but we need to act now. We must also think globally in this movement, as COVID has affected supply chains around the world. The pandemic has also brought to light more than ever the disparity between wealthy and those without wealth in their access to healthcare. By addressing all these inequities, we can make positive changes. Vote with your dollars and become active in climate change and sustainability organizations. I'd like to end with a quote from Raj Patel, author of Stuffed and Starved, The Hidden Battle for the World Food System. What I miss in the US food movement is an urgent sense of history. History about the soil on which local food is grown, about the blood of First Nations and slaves in that soil, about the legacy of settler colonialism that lets some folks obsess over kale, while those harvesting kale, it can't afford to buy it. And as we think about this, we're going to sing. The point here is that we are a community and we do this together. And as the UU has led us in this and is a partner with the United Nations, we know we're not doing this alone. So they will know we are UUs by our love, is what we're going to be singing. So please join me. Chelsea, if you could put the verses that we're going to be singing in the chat, that'd be great. And Rich is going to be doing a piece of this with me as well. He's not going to be on screen. You'll just hear his heavenly voice from over here. And so join me. We are one in the spirit, we are one in this world. We are one in the spirit, we are one in this world. And we pray that all unity may one day be restored. And the love we are used by our love, by our love. Yes, the love we are used by our love. We will work with each other. We will work side by side. We will work with each other. We will work side by side. And we'll guard each one's dignity and save each one's pride. And the love we are used by our love, by our love. Yes, the love we are used by our love. By our love, by love, and the love we are used by our love, by our love. Yes, the love we are used by our love. We will walk with each other. We will walk hand in hand. We will walk with each other. We will walk hand in hand. And together we'll spread the news that love is in our land. And the love we are used by our love, by our love. Yes, the love we are used by our love. By our love.
Love is patient, love is kind, never boast, not full of pride. always hopes, always trusts, evidence of love in us. This is what the prophet said, to love one another.
And I know we are used by love, by our love. Yes, I know we are used by our love. And I know we are used by our love, by our love. Yes, I know we are used by our love.
Thank you, Kimbris. I love your voice. I just love singing with you in the morning. And I'm the last speaker from our group that's going to be giving my views of how I might impact the earth. And I titled my talk, Inconsequential Actions. 5 years before I retired from my job as a civil engineer, a friend sat down in my cubicle and looked me in the eye and said, "Barbara, so much of what we do here is inconsequential." Whoa, I thought it was really odd of him to say that. He did a lot of good work and he influenced many people. But working diligently day after day for either a large corporation or an agency, you can really lose sight of the larger picture of what goals are and not see the impact you have on people and the changes you might inspire. What he saw as inconsequential actions really did make an impact. A few years after Mount St. Helens erupted, my husband at the time and I, along with 4 or 5 other couples, got in our respective Jeeps and went up to the unpaved roads and trails of the Mount St. Helens watershed. We stopped for lunch, viewing the new beheaded profile of the mountain, along with new vegetation of the slopes and valleys. It was magnificent. Before we headed back to civilization, the other people collected all their glass and napkins and garbage, stuffed them into paper bags, and heaved them down the slope. I was stunned. I didn't say a word. I just started working with these people and didn't know them very well. And I was embarrassed. I didn't take the opportunity to make an inconsequential action. Who knows what that might have inspired in others. While raising my daughter, we had long discussions about benefits of recycling, buying food at the local farmers market, and looking where products like clothing and shoes were produced. Later, she announced to her 6th grade class that they should all be aware of where their clothes came from and that other countries that made Michael Jordan tennis shoes used child labor, and that just wasn't fair. The kids chided and scoffed and laughed at her. She felt so bad, she put her head down on her desk. Her teacher walked up to her and said, "Please raise your head." She looked around and saw all the kids in the various stages of taking off their shoes to find out where they were made. At least they weren't taking off their clothes. He told her that she taught a very good lesson that day. Her small, inconsequential action made people take notice. Recently, we were fortunate and exhausted to have my now grown daughter and her 3 daughters with us for 5 days. My granddaughters are conscientious, recycling everything they can. They don't use plastic cups or plastic silverware, and they get to walk to and from their nearby school each day. Their mom buys local foods, leaning toward plant-based. These actions help reduce CO2 emissions and help support local farmers. Their small, seemingly inconsequential actions collectively make a difference. Me, I recycle. And currently I'm trying to figure out how to break my horrid addiction to paper towels, but nothing sucks up grease like a paper towel. I see this as a problem of my very entitled upbringing. I used to use them by the yard. Now I take several and I put them back, and take several and put half of them back. Small, inconsequential steps that I might take could make a difference and inspire others. Collectively, we do make a difference. Thank you.
In our announcements today, we still need folks to work on a hybrid service team. So please contact Reverend Solly if you wish to help in this effort. And if you are not getting our weekly announcements, please contact Sharon at admin@cascadeuu.org to get on the email list.
I just wondered if Reverend Elizabeth had any announcements of her own, possibly.
How did you know? I just wanted to thank this team again. Ronnie was a big part of this, and I appreciate how flexible and resilient they've been changing plans. And I wanted to thank Jana again for coming with Sustainable Wenatchee. Thank you very much. And then next week is our service of remembrance. So we will honor our dead. And I just want to invite anyone to bring a picture or a special object if you would like to do that next Sunday.
Thank you. Today's benediction is an affirmation of hope. We, bearers of the dream, affirm that a new vision of hope is emerging. We pledge to work for that community in which justice will be actively present. We affirm that there is struggle yet ahead, yet we know that in that struggle, there is hope for the future. We affirm that we are co-creators of the future, not passive pawns. And we stand united in affirmation of our hope and vision of a just and inclusive society. We affirm the unity of all persons. We affirm brotherhood and sisterhood that allows us to touch upon each other's humanity. We affirm a unity that opens our eyes, ears, and hearts to see the different but common forms of oppression, suffering, and pain. Yet we are one in the image of God, and we celebrate our hopes for human unity. Within ourselves and within the gathered community, we will discover the strength not to hide our indifference, affirming that hope publicly expressed energizes and enables us to move forward. Together, we pledge action to transcend barriers, be they racial, political, economic, social, or religious. We pledge to make our tomorrows become our todays. Thank you.
So this is our chalice extinguishing and our extinguishing prayer. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Thank you. And now for our closing song. I think everybody knows this, but Chelsea, you may want to put the lyrics in there.
Carry the flame of peace and love.
We meet again. Carry the flame of peace.